Are you a project manager looking to keep your project scope under control without always having to be the bad guy? If so, this week's episode is for you. Better Projects Today is the bite-sized project management podcast helping you to bridge theory and practice in your own work to create better teams, better results, and better projects today. I'm Tyler Norman, and I bring 16 years of experience as a global program leader and mentor to project professionals. Today, we'll be talking about how to handle scope creep with grace. This topic was submitted by Mohammed Namad on LinkedIn. If you have a topic you'd like to see on the show, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or drop it in the comments below. Scope creep is something that every project manager, no matter how new or how experienced you are, deals with regularly. This is something that can be frustrating, but is a normal course of business with project management, and learning how to navigate potential scope creep with grace is really key to becoming a mature and skilled project manager. Let's start with, why does scope creep happen? I think it can get a little bit frustrating and you start to think that people are trying to throw things on that shouldn't be there. You think they're being self-serving. It's important to understand the context and not throw blame. Most of the time, scope creep comes from well-intentioned stakeholders who are trying to get more value out of the project. It can even come from a place that's a little bit flattering of they see your project going well and they want to try to get more done that can help them out. It can also come from ambiguity in requirements, a lack of change control. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. And oftentimes, new project managers who have a fear of conflict will just say yes, other than explain why something shouldn't be included in the scope. The key here is scope creep is generally a symptom of weak boundaries or poorly defined systems, more so than bad people. So our goal here shouldn't be to shut down all asks. The goal here is to protect the value that the investment in the project is creating, maintain trust with your stakeholders, and really come to the success to deliver what's agreed upon, not what everyone asks for along the way. The key here is grace, respect, give clarity, but still be firm. If you find a way to balance those things, you'll be able to handle your project in a way that's professional and respects everyone involved. So we're going to talk about some tactics in a little bit here, but I'd like to start with one tool that I recommend to just about every new project manager I mentor, and that's the yes, no, yes framework. And I actually have to give a shout out here because I've got the book next to me. This is from a book by a gentleman named William Ury called The Power of a Positive No. And it's essentially the 3-step yes, no, yes. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it's very powerful. When someone brings you something that isn't appropriate to go into your project as scope, say yes first, affirm the shared goal and the value of what they asked. That you can say things like, that's a great recommendation. I could see how that would provide a lot of value. I can see how that pain point is something that we should definitely deal with. You said the yes, now say no, give a clear, respectful boundary. We can't add this to scope because it doesn't align with the goals of the project. If we added this at this point, it would impact delivery. This isn't the place that this work should be managed. And then offer that last second yes, which is an alternative or a path forward. What we can do is put this into the intake for this other team that would be more appropriate to get the work done. Maybe it's yes, that has value. No, I can't just put it into scope for this sprint. But yes, what I can do is put together a formal change request so that our sponsor can look at it. This is a place where it's all about the technique. If you just shut it down and people feel disrespected, that's when you get a lot of the fight. But if you can use this technique to give respect to the stakeholder, give respect to their ask, while also putting a boundary in place for your project to make sure that you're protecting that value, that's going to help you keep the stakeholder happy over the long term and keep them as a teammate. So having given that first example of a tactic, let's dig in on some more. So first things first, let's talk about prevention of scope creep. Any good project plan sets really clear boundaries up front. Some of the ways you can do this are state the values of the project and what you're looking to create early and often so that it's clear this is what we're accomplishing. The more ambiguous your project scope is, the more likely it is that you're going to have to swat down things on the edges regularly. And then also establish a really transparent change control process up front. If there's no change control process, then everything's change or everything's not change, depending upon how you look at it. Additionally, it's got to be transparent. If you say you have a change control process and you can put in change requests, but people come to learn that any change request is just going to be a piece of paper that you set aside in your inbox and never look at, then they're not going to respect your change control process. So some keys here are set up a process that assesses every single change request, even if it's a pretty quick, this isn't going to go into the project, we're going to defer it elsewhere. Every single change should be documented, and any user in the project should be able to see your change register. They should be able to see who requested, what decision was made, what happened next for any change that was submitted at any point in the project. If you have that transparency and stakeholders see that you are giving every request the analysis it deserves, that's going to help them not fight or push back whenever you decline a change. Next, real-time response. Always stay calm, even if the request is last minute or you can tell it's political in nature. Some folks will wait until the last second and hit you with something to try to get you riled up and get a quick emotional response that they can use against you. Stay calm and acknowledge the intent behind the ask. Again, that's where yes, no, yes can be valuable. Yes, I can see why that's valuable. I understand why you're asking for that. And then go into an explanation of what comes next. Next is use negotiation. Sometimes, changes can fall on the margin of maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's not. First things first is to have a good change management process where you can get it in front of your sponsor or your change control board. But if you're on the edge of maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, look at what it would mean for your time, your cost, your scope, and start to look at trade-offs. This change does make sense, but it's going to push our timeline. Are we willing to sacrifice our delivery date? If not, what other scope are we willing to give up in order to make this happen? Are we willing to pay for it? Maybe you look at a standalone justification for that scope. Negotiation is a big part of project management, and change control is very much the same way. Another key tactic is always follow up in writing with what the outcome of a scope discussion is. This goes with creating transparency and making people feel respected, even if you don't introduce their change into the project. Every single change request should get a follow-up in writing describing what the outcome was and what's going to happen next. And then, a key to all of this is tone management. So even when you're saying no to the request, say no to the request, not the person. It's so important to avoid sarcasm, defensiveness, aggression. This is something that's hard to do in a remote environment, but it's so crucial to avoid coming off like you're dismissing the person when you're saying no to a request. In closing, scope creep isn't always avoidable, but how you handle it is a big determinant of your maturity as a PM. Brand new PMs say yes to everything, and it blows up their project. PMs with a little bit of experience push back on everything, and they miss out on value from that they could have potentially gotten from the project. Really mature PMs create transparency and fully acknowledge every ask and make the best decision, whether that's a yes or a no. So with that, I would challenge everyone that's listening, think about how you could use the yes, no, yes framework in your next bit of scope negotiation and, see if that helps with the level of respect that your stakeholders feel they're getting from you. That brings us to the end of the episode. If you've got a potentially sticky scope situation you're dealing with now, throw it in the comments below, send it to me, and maybe we'll break it down on a future episode with a deep dive. If you have any other questions or topics you'd like to see in a future episode, throw it in the comments below.